Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I am Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Friday. Thank you for joining me. We are finally here at Roll Call. It's Roll Call Friday. We just keeping it transparent with you. We're taping this conversation the evening before Roll Call because we're so busy today, and it's going to be just kind of a preview of Roll Call and a preview of the conversation that I'll have Friday night tonight with Tucker Carlson. T.J. Moe is in town and is going to participate with me today in a conversation about what we're going to talk with Tucker Carlson about tonight at the Roll Call event at 3rd and Lindsley. Tucker Carlson, country music star Randy Houser, our good friend Steve Byrne, the comedian, and yours truly will all be at 3rd and Lindsley. Go to fearlessrollcall.com. There's still some limited tickets available for the event tonight. You can get in the building. It's an intimate setting, and you can see, hopefully, what I believe to be will be one of the most fascinating and interesting conversations between two guys in the culture space, in the politics space, in just the commentary punditry space that are both fearless. That's myself and Tucker Carlson. And so TJ and I were having a discussion about what should I talk with Tucker about. And, you know, the only thing I know for sure that I'm going to talk with him about, and I'll be open to your suggestions, TJ, is I'm going to make sure we spend some time talking about the heat that Tucker took for talking about the Great Replacement Theory years ago, and how that relates to the demonization of white men and Western civilization. And, you know, my belief, and this is kind of the purpose of Roll Call, is that those of us that are believers in Christ, we have to select our allies based on shared values, not on skin color, and that people need to have the understanding that the attack on white people in this country and in this culture is really just trying to demonize Christian values. And it's trying to delegitimize our Constitution. If you can define white men as evil, you can now say anything that they produced is evil and needs to be remade, and that includes the U.S. Constitution, or that's really the target. And because so much of Western civilization is defined by Christianity, they're using a war against white men as a proxy war against Christianity. That's where I think we'll start the discussion with Tucker Carlson. It's certainly where we'll get to at some point.
Mm-hmm. I love that, and especially because, and I personally believe you've had a pretty big impact on this, Tucker has moved into his faith a lot over the last 5 years publicly. I have no idea what was going on previously, but publicly, he talks a lot about his faith. He's Episcopalian. He was just talking about it with Megyn Kelly this week. He talked about it with Matt Walsh this week. I mean, it seems like in the interviews that I watch with him, he's talking about it a lot. And he hasn't addressed it exactly, but it seems like he's identified the same thing that you have. Hey, bad white man is just code for bad Christianity. That's all that means. And so how do you fight against that? How do you come up with the courage to fight against that as a white dude? And I mean, look, I don't know that it's any easier for you. You're called a sellout, a racist, a coon, you know, all the different things. So at one point I thought, you know, it is probably tougher for white guys today than it is black guys to say these things. After being around you for a while, I don't know that it's much easier. I think anybody willing to speak out against this stuff right now is a real problem, and you've got to be willing to deal with the consequences.
You know what's weird about this conversation, or ironic? I don't know if it's weird, but it's ironic that what we're really talking about as it relates to white men code for Christianity, this whole racism and white people are white supremacy rules America. It's a dog whistle. And literally, I'm using the language of the left, But that's where I believe the left and the secular crowd have been very creative. The things that they're actually doing or accusing conservatives and Christians of doing are actually the things that they're doing. They're just projecting.
Gaslighting.
That's
the term. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Gaslight. It's they keep saying no. You guys are using dog whistles, and they're actually the ones using dog whistles, and everybody knows it, but it goes unaddressed. Mm-hmm. And Christians and conservatives have been so on the defensive that they've and kind of reluctant to start using their tactics against them. Like, hey man, that's just a dog whistle. You really just don't like Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
But what I saw either in the Megyn Kelly interview or maybe it was the conversation with Matt Walsh, I can't remember, these things all kind of run together, but Tucker has said, hey man, I don't care that you call me racist, that has zero power, it has zero credibility, and I respect that, and I'm trying to promote a mentality among men where we just don't pay that any attention, we don't bow to it, and it feels like Tucker is 100% there.
Yes, he was talking about that with Megyn Kelly, and it is, he's one of the few, and Tucker he's probably the number one target of the left, number one of
outside of Trump and Elon.
Yes, yeah. In the media, I think he's number one. And do you know why I think he's able to do this? And I do think you should get into this with him because it's not the opposite of what you do, but you do read what's going on. Tucker doesn't read anything. Tucker does not care. He says he's dyslexic. He doesn't even have a TV in his house. He hardly gets on X at all. He repeated that in his interview with Matt Walsh, that he's like, to the degree that I read anything, I read like Matt Walsh and a couple other people just to see what they're saying. He's not interested in the blowback. He doesn't read any of it. It's like he says the news that he gets truly is texted to him from his producers and other people. So he has no idea what's going on. It's very easy to go forward and be called whatever when you don't hear it.
That is fascinating. Look, I've seen, take someone like Tony Kornheiser. He's never been on Twitter. Take someone like Charles Barkley. He avoided Twitter, and I don't think he has. I saw some really established older media figures to say, I'm not getting involved with Twitter and social, it's toxic. Mike Wilbon on Twitter, but has now backed away from it and has talked about, I just don't use it anymore. I saw some very smart journalists that, again, aren't even in the political space, but obviously you know who Wright Thompson is. Mizzou, one of the legendary sports writers. I think early on, he got on Twitter and then said, nah, I'm good, and backed away from this. And even a leftist, a hardcore leftist like Ta-Nehisi Coates, he got off of Twitter very early, and I don't know if I've made a mistake but I obviously rely on Twitter to follow the news, and I'm someone that's a bit crazy and or weird that the criticism and the name calling that I take, it just doesn't change me. I can't say that it doesn't bother me, but I'm not going to not say something because it's going to be rebuked or land wrongly on X.
Totally agree with that, and I would say you properly framed that. You're unique in that way, and X and social media is what has destroyed everyone else. And so there are the two types of people. There's the Jason Whitlock who can, I wouldn't say you're immersed in it, but you can exist within that ecosystem and be on Twitter, see what's going on, read your mentions. You're one of the few people that I think will respond to anybody. A lot of people only want to respond to other notable people. You don't operate that way. In fact, I rarely see you responding to those people. You respond to the everyday man. So there's that person that lives within that ecosystem, and then there's the Tucker Carlsons of the world that just refuse to exist in the ecosystem at all. And to the degree that he has things go out, they are sent out by his people. There are clips that have been cut up, or I do think on rare occasion, like he sent out a tweet about bombing Iran and what a mistake it would be. That felt like it came directly from Tucker. And so perhaps he sent it, but I don't think he spends any time on it. And that would be something, I'm certainly in your side of this scenario. I do a lot on Twitter. That's how I stay informed. That's how I learn about the world. That's how I get what I feel like is the real news, but because I can follow people, real journalists like you and Tucker, who actually go out and find the truth. And so, but if you're willing to say anything, and I'm about 0.1% as followed as any of you guys, but my DMs are full of people who destroy me regularly. Anytime a tweet goes anywhere, and I was tweeting this weekend about Shadur Sanders, and it got into talking about how it sure seems like a lot of black people will support anything black. And you should see, people in my mentions, hey, we got your address. I hope your daughter doesn't mind. And look out, good luck. Full of this stuff. And you just live with it or you don't, but it chases a lot of people up and it shuts a lot of people up, I'm telling you.
This is, and I don't know if I'll drag Tucker into this, but I might. And he'll know how to handle it, but this is where my complaints about how much of the media space has now been dominated by women. And when you start talking about, can you handle the blowback? Can you handle all the negative blowback that comes along with it? I can hear Megyn Kelly right now. Of course we can, I'm tough and blah, blah. And it may be true about Megyn Kelly. But the overwhelming majority of women, because I listen to them complain, I got death threats. And TJ, because you're a man, it's like you never bring up the Twitter threats that you receive because you just kind of blow them off. Whereas the women lean into that, and I'm a victim and I shouldn't get that kind of blowback. And I think they try to avoid that kind of blowback. They're always going to prioritize, and they should, safety over their freedom to speak. And that's why I'm just like saying, hey, if that's your mindset and mentality, which is justifiable based on the way you're made, you're the weaker vessel, you're not someone that's in the gym and all muscled up, if that, then perhaps maybe you shouldn't be trying to be a leader in these discussions, because there is a level of blowback that comes along with that you clearly don't want to deal with.
I certainly agree with that. We've had a lot of these discussions. What I would tell you is the left has succeeded in a big way. The men are no different. I would give that same advice to all the men. There are so few Jason Whitlocks who are willing to deal with the blowback and whatever career consequences that comes with, whatever personal consequences that comes with, whatever happens in my own family. I'm going to deal with it because I'm following this truth, and the truth is my path. Men are not built that way today either. And so all the advice that you sit up here regularly and give to women, today's man should heed that same advice. They should all get off Twitter. They cannot handle it.
There's a lot of truth, because I'm sitting here thinking back to my career as a newspaper journalist. And one of the reasons I had so much success is because not everyone was as willing to be fearless like me and deal with the blowback. And so it was like, for years when I was in Kansas City, the Kansas City Star, my bosses and the industry tried to pretend like a guy like Joe Posnanski was doing the same thing as me, or if not better. But Joe, and I'm not trying to rip on him, and I know it does sound like I am, but it was just factually true. He took no risk. Most everything that he wrote about any subject was something that person was like, hey, I'm going to have this framed and put in my basement. And where me, 50% of the time, people were like, hey, this is something I'm going to wipe my rear end with and flush it down the toilet. And if I ever see Jason, I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. And I got that from growing up idolizing someone like Mike Royko, a columnist out of Chicago that was fearless and was just kind of fearless, most fearless journalist in the country. And he took on big, powerful people and criticized them. That's what I thought journalism was. And there used to be other guys like that, from a T.J. Simers out in Los Angeles. There were Woody Page in Denver. And you're right, the whole industry has changed, and that's changed the personality of even the men that are journalists, because their bosses don't want the blowback. The boss of any of these media companies, TV, print, blogosphere, internet, most of them want as few phone calls as possible.
Of course.
And one, they're over. I'm going to defend them to some degree. They're overworked now. They don't have the big staffs, and they're overworked. And every time you're on the phone, having to answer some reader's complaints, you're taking away from, other things you could be doing. I can remember my original boss in Kansas City was a guy named Dale By. He hired me, got credit for me, and he used to sit on the phone. There would be days where the only thing he did was answer phone calls from people complaining about me. And but he enjoyed it, and that is exactly what they wanted. People didn't talk about the Kansas City Star, and the Star wanted people. They wanted to be relevant. They wanted a voice that made people react. And I think it's the second or third column I wrote in Kansas City. It was just a joke, spoof column, making fun of Kansas State fans and Kansas fans. And it was a harmless column, but it cracked all these jokes on Kansas and Kansas State. They were playing a football game, and I made fun of the rivalry. And a lot of people thought this is the funniest thing I've ever read, and a lot of people thought, who's this dude coming in here making fun of our schools? And they called the Kansas City Star all day.
Yeah.
People don't want that anymore. And so that when the men at the top decide, hey man, I can't handle this headache of having to address people that are reacting, or they're afraid, because it could be both or it could be just either one, that makes everybody else choose safety and choose, hey, I'm not going to say what I really think.
This leads me to another question I think I would like you to ask, and it's an observation you've made before, so this is not my original thought, it's yours. How did Tucker and Trump, the two guys certainly born not poor, not in the middle class, these are the wealthy guys, how did they become the voice of the working man? And one of my theories, listening to you talk here, as men are looking for safety and guaranteed incomes, those two guys, perhaps the answer is, those two guys have seen that money doesn't protect you from much of anything. And look what they try to do with Trump. And money's not going to save America. Those guys got plenty of money. Whereas the guys like me, it's like I could have the illusion that if I just get more money, everything will be okay. And it's a lie.
Certainly, and obviously Trump's father was wealthy. Tucker's family, I think mother or stepmother was part of the Swanson food industry, dynasty or whatever, comes from a lot of money. And they have certainly figured out, I mean, Tucker Carlson is sitting there like, hey man, I got a bunch of money, Trump's got a bunch of money, but they can import all these foreigners and change this American culture, make me the enemy of America, and it doesn't matter how much money I have. And so those are guys that prioritize American freedom, American free speech.
Americans.
American values.
Yes.
And they're sitting there. Trump's got kids and grandkids. Tucker's got kids, is going to have grandkids. And they're really just sitting there saying, like, what world am I going to leave my kids? And so it is worth the risk. And when you think about, hey, men storming the beaches of Normandy, knowing they're going to die, this is a similar mentality, because we don't storm beaches anymore. Everything's drones and bombs and all that. But there are still some American men out here that are like, you know what? If this costs me my reputation, if I'm known as a pariah, and for Trump and even Tucker Carlson, if this costs me my life, I'm willing to pay that price because I'm not going to be a coward so that my kids have to suffer from my cowardice.
And it's social proof. That's a lot of what you're talking about. This is what Elon talked about during the election. Like, why did he wear a MAGA hat all the time? It was social proof. He's telling everybody, go put your MAGA hats on so people don't think they're the only ones who think this. Because people agree with us all over America. The vast majority of people, in my view, agree with us, many of them on these social issues. But I'll give you an example of something that you're not allowed to say that is so obvious to the majority of people if you stop and think about it for a second. surrogate mothers. Tucker was just talking about this with Matt Walsh, and they were talking about it as relates to gay couples. But surrogacy, the first act you're ever going to do is rip a baby away from their mother, never to see her again, and then give her to some gay couple. And we're all good with that. Nobody says anything, and you're not allowed to because civil rights and you can't discriminate. And you're like, what are the baby's rights? The baby doesn't have a right to a mother and a father? Certainly the mother that just birthed this kid seconds ago? You're going to rip her out the first act you ever do? And we're not allowed to say that. Nobody's allowed to talk about it. So only Matt Walsh and Tucker Carlson will sit up there, and everybody else will shut up because their employer will call them up. And look, I've had issues. I'm a realtor. I've had issues with my company calling me up and say, you can't say stuff like that. You won't hold your license here anymore. So, I don't heed to those calls, but me and my brother, who are in business together, have had a lot of conversations. Just this week, we had a tenant go through my tweets, and they had just preparing to sign a lease, agreed to it, loved the place. I saw your tweets. I don't want anything to do with you. It was a young black couple, very well put together. If I were such a racist, I knew they were black. I wouldn't have put them there in the first place. But the point is, they wanted nothing to do with somebody who disagreed that black people should walk through life as victims and blame white people for everything.
And Tucker, and again, you're right, because I've made the observation for a long time that how did Tucker go from bow tie, elite, private school, to the voice of MAGA? And there's other people out there like that. I would lump Glenn Greenwald into that same category. It's almost just as fascinating. This dude's LGBTQ, and he may be, other than Tucker, the journalist I respect the most. And it's mind-blowing, the people that have figured out and come around, even, and I hate to give him credit because I'm not sure if he knows it, because I think it's just more of a pure business decision, but even Bill Maher, to some degree, is realizing that, hey, writing off MAGA and defining all those people as evil and wicked is about as dumb a thing as you can do. And so there are Matt Taibbi, Tucker Carlson, Matt Walsh. Maybe I should ask Tucker even about, as critical. This would be kind of gossipy, but as critical as he's been of Ben Shapiro, what did he think about Matt Walsh agreeing to come on his show?
Yeah,
that Tucker's been hypercritical of Ben Shapiro, and Matt Walsh is going on Tucker's show, going out to, I think, in Maine, Tucker Studio, I believe that's where he was, in Maine, to do his show. That's a significant move, an indicator of like where the Daily Wire has gone on the other side of Jeremy Boring being pushed out. And I'll go back to the original point in terms of the only strategy that seems to be able to work at this point, you have to be your own boss in order to speak freely in the media space.
There's still ramifications there, though. I'm experiencing them, right? I am my own boss, but tenants still look up your stuff. I still don't want any part of it.
No. But I was talking about in the media space.
Oh, in the media space, yeah.
Tucker's gone independent. Candace Owens has gone independent. Matt Walsh is being given independency, it seems like, from the Daily Wire, because if Jeremy Boring was still in charge, I don't think he'd be on with Tucker Carlson.
I don't either.
I don't think he'd be saying all the, well, he
To be clear, Ben is still trying to reach out. Dave Rubin offered to moderate a discussion between Ben and Tucker right after the Matt Walsh thing came out, because a lot of people were talking about that. And Dave tweeted out today, which was Thursday when we're doing this, that Ben had agreed to it, and Tucker said he can come on my show if he wants to talk.
Yeah, he doesn't need a third man in the ring.
Certainly not. But Ben has said in the past, and again, I mean, just for the record here, I couldn't be more Team Tucker, but Ben has said in the past, I've reached out to Tucker, asked him to come on the show. I said, I will go on your show. He said wanted nothing to do with that. So he's not followed up and has not been interested.
That's fast. Do you think I would? Should I be asking to talk with Ben Shapiro?
Sure. And I think you should ask Tucker, explain to me, because a lot of people are wondering, explain to me your riff with Ben Shapiro. People just see one-offs that Ben will say about you. There's obviously a beef to some degree going on here. Can you explain it to us? Is this something that can be worked out? Do you have any interest in working this out? Can I help as a part of this? What does that look like? Because a lot of people are interested.
That is a good question. I don't think it's gossipy. I want to be crystal. I don't know Tucker's answer to that. I don't think I've ever had a conversation with Tucker that had anything to do with Ben Shapiro. So what I'm telling you is my gut instincts and where I'm at. I am frustrated with people who have interest outside of America, that live here in America and benefit from American freedom. I am truly America first, and really America on. I don't care and I've traveled and found, hey, parts of Europe interesting, been to Japan for a month for the Olympics. I somewhat enjoy travel. If I never leave America the rest of my life, I couldn't care less. I'm somewhat interested, but I'm just really not. I'm so protective of and concerned about America that I don't have hostility for other countries, but I just don't have an interest. I'm someone, and again, this will irritate people or they'll think I'm crazy or weird. I don't see Israel as some special place. I really don't. And I know many people do. I've had this argument with people. Well, this is where Jesus walked, and this is this, and this is that. And now you can visualize the Bible. You think I don't think Jesus walked here? He created it. It's his. And so I just don't put Israel in some special place, and people that do, and then all of the foreign influence of dual citizens that are lawmakers here in America. And again, this goes well beyond Israel. Whoever this Indian dude is that's trying to impeach Trump, that can barely speak English.
Yep.
I don't understand it.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Ilhan Omar, I don't understand it. You can just move over here, get some citizenship, and next thing you know, you can be a lawmaker and you can be trying to impeach Donald Trump.
Yep.
And so I've been through the conversations and been through the disagreements. Like when I say well, Ben's not solely concerned with America. I've had that conversation turned, well, that's anti-Semitic. That's an anti-Semitic trope. And I'm like, a person that sits down and has dinner with Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel, I can't make the argument like, well, damn, he's got dual concerns that I don't have. I only care about America. He seems to care about Israel and America, and in that order. And I would love to have that conversation with Ben Shapiro without Ben, because I can't control what everybody else does. But if Ben Shapiro would be like, hey, you know what, that's a legitimate question. Let me give you the answer for it. Instead of leaning back and, well, that's anti-Semitic. That's a trope. And then legalizing the rest of the crowd and Wikipedia and everybody else. Well, Whitlock's an anti-Semite because he's asked someone who clearly cares about Israel on a passionate level whether or not, does that cloud your support of America? It's a legitimate question, but it's been illegalized to have that. And I would think, I'm total speculation. I'm not speaking for Tucker Carlson, but I just think anyone with a brain that's America First has a question about, hey, are we too over the top as it relates to our passion for Israel? And it seemed like he and Matt Walsh kind of had that conversation. And so, yeah, maybe I will follow up with him on that.
That'd be a good one. I've seen Ben address the question you're talking about before. It seems to me, and I certainly won't speak to Ben, I hope you have the conversation with Ben, actually. I think that'd be very healthy and interesting. It seems to me that he does get offended by the question because he believes that he's so clearly pro-America. His family lives here, and he, in his view, fights harder for conservative values than anybody else, and he's trying to save and help America more than anybody. And everything he says about Israel, again in his view, is to help America. And that having a presence in the Middle East like that, where we get major surveillance, and a lot of the best technology, this part is true, a lot of the best technology from our military was developed from Israel and given to us. Like, I mean, there's something in a plane where you can see way over the horizon. The Israelis developed that with our money, but they did develop it with their technology. And so he would say, I have a vested interest in Israel, yes, because I'm a Jew, and yes, because there's a lot of religious pieces to all this, but also, and in large part, because I'm pro-America, and the more pro-Israel I am, it helps America.
And that is his argument, and he can make that argument. Other people have a right to say, no, I think we can make it without Israel. And it's nice that we've received some advantages from them, but I also think there's some consequences for that passionate relationship with Israel that we should be able to discuss. That's all. Because, hey, maybe he can put together an argument that will convince me to his side, but other people need to be allowed to make the opposite argument without being called anti-Semitic. It's no different than all the racism claims. It seems like a way of shutting down a discussion that needs to be had.
Just asking questions. All these guys just
there
asking.
We go.
That is one of the things. But here, what would you say to him if this were one of his questions and positions to you, which a lot of people I think would evaluate as fair? The way you say things matters, and when you say, man, it sure seems like Ben Shapiro's Israel first, that's very different than, could we have a conversation on how your love for Israel could potentially cloud your judgment on how we should operate and what's best for America? Those two things land very differently to the masses.
They do, but let's say Ben Shapiro was, and I know he says he's not, but if he is Israel first, that doesn't make him a bad person.
It would probably discard, it would allow people like you, perhaps, probably me, a lot of Americans, discard his opinion and box him out of the conversation because he's no longer for us.
Well, no, you can be Israel first and still for America.
Sure, but then as it relates to the Israel conversation, I would discard his opinion. This guy can't think properly, you're out. When we talk about Israel, you can come back in when we're talking about somebody else. When we deal with Russia, fine. When we're dealing with Israel, can't listen to you, you're not for us.
Yeah, that's a position people could take, but I wouldn't. And again, I'm not saying I wouldn't, because I'll accept the truth from wherever it comes. And so you can be Israel first and live here in America and still speak truth and still speak honestly and still be a good person and an American in good standing. But I do think it's someone like me that doesn't have a dual concern and doesn't believe that there is that Israel is so vital to America's future that we just have to accept and or we can't be critical of Israel. I reject that.
Ben would say he's been very critical of Israel, particularly their politics, because they're very liberal over there in many ways.
Yeah.
And he would say, again, if you guys had a conversation that wasn't throwing punches, which I know is not what you're aiming for, but so if you sat down and you were both ears open and only just trying to explain your positions, Ben would probably say to you, Jason, I've got a lot of hours on my own show of criticism for Israel. And I don't like the way they operate in this way and this way and this way. And, people don't want to hear it that much in America, because who cares if it doesn't relate to America? I'm an American, I care most about American politics, but I got a lot of problems with Israeli politics and the decisions they make. I think he would say that.
And I would say, obviously, I could say the same thing as one of the reasons I speak so honestly is because I speak honestly about black people and black Americans. And, this isn't the brand that I've been given, not what I believe is my brand, but the brand that I've been given is, man, Whitlock is hypercritical of black people. I think my critics would argue that that's my brand. Whitlock is hypercritical of black people. If he's got so much criticism of Israel that his brand is, man, I think Ben Shapiro is hypercritical of Israel, then I would be like, we're on some equal footing here. But I don't think that's his brand. I think most people believe he's like super pro-Israel while criticizing them from time to time.
Well, Ben would tell you he's super pro-Israel. And again, yes. Jason Whitlock would tell you he's super pro-black.
No, he wouldn't. I'm not pro-black at all. I'm pro-Christian.
Okay, let me say it this way. You want the best for black people.
I want the best for all people.
Absolutely, and that includes black people, right? It's all lives matter.
Yes.
It's the exact same thing. So you being hypercritical is a demonstration of your love for them. It is not a demonstration of your hate for them. And you've been casted the opposite.
Yes.
And so what Ben, again, may say, I don't know what private conversation, what Ben may say is black culture in America directly impacts America. We talk about America all the time. Ben on his show talks about America all the time, sitting around and being hypercritical. It'd be very hard to get that reputation when he sits around and talks about America and American politics all the time and not Israel. It would be weird to do an Israel show every day here in America. If you want to be an American, like Ben is, extremely popular political pundit, to sit around and talk about Israel enough to be labeled the hyper critical of Israel guy, that would be difficult.
I'm going to put a pin in this because we've moved so far from Tucker that, and I don't want to create the impression that that's going to be the focus of my conversation with Tucker, but it could come up, and you never know where it'll go. Obviously, I'll want to ask Tucker about the demonization of himself and Joe Rogan and these other people that are willing to have conversations with Daryl Cooper and other people that seem to want to talk about World War II in a more nuanced fashion. I can't. Has Tucker talked much about the Douglas Murray deal?
He talked about it with Matt Walsh.
He did?
Yes. That is how the Matt Walsh thing. So had they talked about it much, I don't know. But they did address it. That is how it came up that Matt said, hey, if you can't exist without America, you should not exist. That came up through the Douglas Murray conversation.
All right. Well, hey, listen. This conversation with Tucker is, let me do the math. About 10 hours away. 10 hours away. Yeah, we're airing this. This is 10 a.m. and Tucker will hit the stage around 8 o'clock.
Oh, okay. Yeah, when he actually gets there, sure.
And so you can still email me. If you have questions you'd like for me to ask Tucker Carlson or conversation you'd like to see Tucker and I have, email me at fearlessblazeshow@gmail.com. That's fearlessblazeshow@gmail.com. Still time for you to join us. fearlessrollcall.com. fearlessrollcall.com. Use the promo code 997. We'll see you tonight.
Waiting for the countdown, coming off the breakdown, standing in line for freedom. Looking for a breakout, feeling like a standoff, nothing in life like freedom. Came like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all this moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on the corner, never been alone. I'm breaking my back for We are receiving all deceiving. We all wanna be free. We want freedom. I wanna be. I just